Hi there, this is George Salis. I'm the author of See Above, Some Below, and I also run The Kaleidoscope, thekaleidoscope.com. It's an online literary publication that focuses on innovative and subversive works. And I also run a column on that site called Invisible Books, which shines a light on neglected authors and their works. But now I want to upload the first video in a series of videos for a new channel called, simply enough, George Salis's Book Hauls. And while I'm somewhat of a perfectionist with my other work, this I was hoping to be something more casual, something just plain old-fashioned fun, showing off all the gems that I find when I go to raid a bookstore here and a bookstore there. The thing is, there's a thrill to the hunt that you simply cannot get when you just search for a book on Amazon.com or any other online site and then instantly click and buy what you want. While that's very convenient, I much prefer hunting down books. Usually my method is to start from A in the fiction section and go down to Z, scanning with my mental encyclopedia of all the authors I'm interested in, and also authors I may not have heard of at all. And then I find something I wouldn't have found if I hadn't gone to the bookstore. Well, I hope you'll join me on all my journeys and tell me about the books that you have come across as well. For my first video, I want to share a humble stack with you, but it's a special stack. I finally went to New York for the first time, a wonderful whirlwind of a trip in which I got to meet one of my favorite authors, Joseph McElroy, and another dear friend of mine, Wendy Walker, who I've covered on the Kaleidoscope as well, and I encourage you to check out both of those names on the Kaleidoscope. You'll find interviews and reviews. But other than that, I went to one of the most famous indie bookstores of all time, the Strand, which I think boasts something like 18 miles of books. It was wonderful, but not to be the bearer of bad news, it did seem like they had quantity over quality. And so this is why I came away with this humble stack. But when I'm shopping for books, I try to be as nitpicky as possible, because if I wasn't nitpicky, then I'd be drowned in books. As you can see, this is just one shelf of mine. There are two others. So I try to avoid ex-library, I try to avoid paperbacks, and books with lots of foxing. It's amazing how much foxing you can find on books. I don't know how people treat books to get them so messed up, but the ones I rescue are the ones that have a nice home, and I love them and care for them like a child. So, without further ado, let's get to the stack. Maybe you've been wondering, as I'm talking, what we have here. The first one is Eyes by William H. Gass, Novellas and Stories. Now, I've read most of Gass. He was not very prolific. He spent decades working on his magnum opus, The Tunnel, which I did a group read of not too long ago and posted an in-depth review of that on the Kaleidoscope, which I would encourage you to check out. Gass is wonderful, simply, and I would have loved to interview him for the site. If we turn here, we see the kind of infamous blurb from Michael Silverblatt, who called The Tunnel the most beautiful, most complex, most disturbing novel to be published in his lifetime. And even a blurb from Susan Sontag, an extraordinary, stunning, beautiful book, Omen Setter's Luck. That's his debut, which I've read. By far, I've enjoyed The Tunnel most out of everything I've read by him. But as a matter of fact, I'm going to be reading one of Gass's stories with the permission of his wife, Mary. That is titled On the Order of Insects, if I'm getting that correctly. And I'll be reading that for my podcast sometime later in the year. And maybe I can read something from this collection if I find something that fits. Let's see what we have here. The first page, the first story. There's some photographs. Always appreciate photographs and illustrations. In camera. And there's Billy himself taking a picture of his reflection, taking a selfie. It starts with, Mr. Gabb didn't have that gift, though his assistant, who was supposed to be stupid but only looked so, would mutter beneath his breath when annoyed by his tasks. He had the gift, he did Gabb. I love the wordplay on the sort of proverb, gift of the gab, or the collocation. So yeah, this one is just beautiful condition, and I can't wait to get to it. Next we have Echo's Bones by Samuel Beckett. I love just the title alone, Echo's Bones. You have my attention there, Mr. Beckett. Now this, it turns out, has an interesting history. As it says on the back, Echo's Bones was intended by Beckett to form the recessional or end piece of his early collection of interrelated stories, More Pricks Than Kicks, from 1934. And it was written at the request of the publisher, but was held back from inclusion in the volume. So it's been unpublished since 1934 until recently. And if you look here, it says the UK price. So this is a UK edition. I didn't even know that until right now. I wonder when it came out. How long did it take for this story to see the light of day? Let's see here. First published 2014, so quite a while. Now, there's a very long introduction here, and then you have notes on the text. This is an image of the original manuscript, which is pretty fascinating. But let's get to the story and check it out. The dead die hard. They are trespassers on the beyond. They must take the place as they find it, the shafts and manholes back into the muck, till such time as the lord of the manor incurs through his long acquiescence a duty of care and respect of them. Again, you have my attention there. I'm very excited. And I've only actually read Waiting for Godot, which pretty much everyone has read at this point. And yet, in school, there's no emphasis on his novels. And I recently acquired, I don't know if you can see that there, Samuel Beckett, a collection of his novels. So I'm going to have a kind of Beckett bonanza one of these days. The next thing I found, now look at that, Elephant Bangs Train. That's another striking title, no pun intended, by William Cotswinkle. Cotswinkle is most known actually for the novelization of E.T. and E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Steven Spielberg. But he actually has quite a lot of work, and the genres that he dabbles in are quite diverse. And I've recently interviewed him for the Kaleidoscope. It's not out yet. The interview's still in the works, but it's mostly done. And as it turns out, this is his first collection of stories from the early 70s. And just looking at the cover, you get that 70s vibe. I love these illustrations, you know, which is a far cry from today's covers that are just so overproduced to the point of soullessness almost. And it wraps around the illustration. Look at that. These are probably based on all the stories that are inside. And if you strip this book, it even has it on the cloth binding there. Wonderful. Let's see. Now, here's the first story. A most incredible meal. In 1843, a Siberian woodcutter, Alexei Bulmovka, while walking homeward in the moonlight, noticed a deep shadow in a mountain of ice. And if you want to know the rest, you're going to have to find your own copy. Sorry. Let's put his clothes back on here. And last but not least, we have something I was never aware of until I stumbled upon it at the Strand. Look at this. Another illustrated cover. Look at that. The Alien by Edwin Roskam. I was struck by the mostly barren cover. You see, it only has the title at the very bottom. And so I was like, what is this? And we can read the description. If you were looking for a man like Emil Blumenlein, probably not pronouncing that correctly, a highly literate, discursive observer of human vagaries and delights, it might never occur to you to seek him out in a teeming shack colony called the Little Mud, just outside of San Juan in Puerto Rico. That sounds normal enough, doesn't it? Then it goes on to say, what he wonders becomes of miracles the day after they occur. Do they bloom, or do they rot like old fish? And then it gets even weirder in the description. I looked this up on Goodreads, and it had, I think, like 0 ratings, no reviews. So this possibly, if I like it, will be something I'll review for my Invisible Books column. Look at that. So, Edwin Roskam, if you look at his bio, it says that he was once a painter, designed the steering oar for Polynesian sailing canoes, and he was a photographer. Yeah, he photographed books and things of that nature. And this was his first, and if I remember correctly, his only novel. You can see how it starts here. Well, that's a note. Bear with me. I knew about him long before he reached me. The community of the Little Mud is suspicious of outsiders, and when one of them intrudes into our complexity of paths and alleys and boardways over at high tide, slapping black water, we take good care to guide him. Even the littlest boys are trained in the art. And you're probably wondering what year this is from. 1964, a first edition, I believe, and in wonderful condition for being so old. And before I say adieu, I just remembered I wanted to show you something. The author photo for Cotswinkle's story collection is something quite unique. Can you say Sherlock Holmes? This is a man of infinite interest. So, if you weren't already interested in his story collection, maybe that will interest you. What is he hiding under that coat? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this very, very first video of mine. And I have more lined up. There's other book hauls I've gotten recently that I want to share with you, but you have to start somewhere, and this is the first. So if you've made it this far, thanks so much for watching. And if you think you want to know more about the books I get and all the gems that I see, I'm stumbling here. But if you want to know more about the gems that I find at bookstores, hit that subscribe button. And I hope you have a great week, everybody.